But when you go back even to Martin Luther, the Reformation was not just, it was never about leaving the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
It was about reforming the way we view, it was kingdom. That's what the Reformation is all about.
Yeah.
It was reforming how we do church, how we live our lives, our families.
I am really excited about this interview. We just finished a summit meeting where Patrice Tsague was our guest speaker. And so I don't know what you have left in your tank, Patrice, but I'm really excited about today because I'd like to spend some time talking about the relationship between business leaders and pastors in the church setting. I haven't heard too many people talk about this in a way that really makes sense. Maybe in isolation, but we had a group of business leaders in town who embraced Dennis Peacock's book, Doing Business God's Way, and tried to get something off the ground, and it just never really happened. And I don't know if it was just too soon and now would be a better time, but my heart really is that the business leaders in this community would feel supported by pastors and vice versa. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit, but maybe you could just talk a little bit about what your journey's been like, because you are living in Vancouver now, but you came from a place.
Yeah. Came from Washington, D.C. Actually, I was born in Cameroon, Central Africa.
Yeah.
Came to the U.S. when I was 11 years old, landed in Washington, D.C. Was not a Christian. Became a Christian at 21 years old. And at 22, the Lord gave me the vision for biblical entrepreneurship. Before that, I was an entrepreneur, and I thought entrepreneurship in business. And so worked in Washington, D.C. for till about 2009 was when I moved to the Northwest. Served there, entrepreneurs and church leaders for several years. I do understand the challenge that of pastors and business leaders. In my own church, when I became a Christian, I was all in, and the Lord gave me the vision for biblical entrepreneurship. I felt I was called to the marketplace, not to start a church or to traditional mission.
Yeah.
Now, I came up in an African American church, which we struggle in the African American church even more so. Because the view of the business person is kind of, hey, you do your work and you tithe and you give so that we can do ministry. So I came along, I said, I'm actually called to pastor in the marketplace, right? To like literally do what we do here, but out there.
Yeah.
And using business to do that. It was, and then if you could preach and teach, right? It's like, it's a waste of a calling if you don't start a church or some kind of pastoral staff. So that was the first tension I'd overcome. So I felt rejected by my church. I was, just to give you an idea, I was on the ordination track. My first time in getting ordained, when it came down to it, I was rejected because I was not willing to plant a church.
Right. And because that's where the value is.
That's what exactly. One pastor even said to me, wow, you're so patient. Because church is not only viable, but also the economic engine. And I mean, why would you start a church just for money?
Yeah.
So that was kind of my journey. And then forward, was there for 10 years, led the business group at the church. So the church was fine as long as I served, right? And I was a value to helping business people in the church. But never seeing what we did as business as ministry. I always saw that the only value for ministry for a business person is that they are a pocketbook to help the church do real ministry.
So do you think that was, a lot of that came from the fact that there is the church world, which oftentimes isn't the kingdom of God? Because if you can get the kingdom, Miles Monroe was so helpful for me in trying to understand the kingdom of God, and when his whole series of rediscovering the kingdom, I had paid really close attention to that because I realized when I listened to him, I really don't think of the world around me as the kingdom of God. I think of it as the church world, the secular world, and the kingdom is almost all of what
everything.
Jesus talked about.
Everything.
Yeah.
We've compartmentalized. Now understand this. As part of that is control, right? As humans, right? Kingdom decompartmentalizes things. It puts the king at the top And we all, no matter what we do, what we serve, we are all being servants of the King.
Yeah.
So it takes control from me, put it to the King. So that's one issue. But I think the other issue is just theology, right? Obviously, there's a kingdom theology, which is one dimension that Miles Monroe dealt with.
Right.
But the traditional church theology from a Western worldview, it's a sacred secular kind of dichotomy. The Eastern framework of theology is more integrated.
Yeah.
Right. It's just the worldview, while the Western is kind of these compartmentalization. By the way, that came from trying to be efficient and manage things. It's not bad intended.
No.
But also throughout church history, you also had a situation where the church needed to control.
Yeah. Control.
Right? Whether it was the Catholic Church, whether it was later on the Protestant Church, whatever, needed to control its domain, while politicians and businessmen controlled their domain.
Yeah.
So it was almost this power struggle, if you look throughout history, between the church, the politics, and the business world, right? I mean, that is why today you have the Vatican.
Yeah.
This is our kingdom. You get out of our business. All of that got creeped because we were all Catholics at one point. If you think about it,
Yeah.
Right? So that's the idea. So now you have hundreds of years of, I hate to call it brainwashing into this notion. But when you go back even to Martin Luther, the Reformation was not just, it was not about leaving the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
It was about reforming the way we view, it was kingdom. That's what the Reformation is all about.
Yeah.
It was reforming how we do church, how we live our lives, our families. He talked a lot about marketplace and kingdom and commerce, just as he talked about the riches of church or religion. So I think, but the problem is, it's not efficient, though. That's the problem, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's not efficient.
And we like efficiency.
We like efficiency.
We like control. We like producing things efficiently.
That's right. And for the business people, we're business people. We're also guilty.
Yeah.
Because we've accepted that, and it makes our life easier. Going back to efficient, more efficient. We don't have to take the responsibility of bringing sacraments, of bringing righteousness, of bringing evangelism, discipleship into the heart of our business, because that could lead to problem with our economic engine.
Yeah.
Right? It could threaten our economic engine. My life is complicated enough. So as a businessman, it's also easier for me if I can just keep those two worlds separate. So it was started by the church, but I think the marketplace has not helped it.
Yeah. Well, some of it too is relationship is so much more costly now than it ever was
100%.
before. We tend to put it on the sideline and say, if I have time, I'll have a relationship. And yet it's always been the key to a healthy church life is the quality of our relationships with each other. As a business person, and you've been in this position a majority of the time, how do you feel the church has looked at you as a business person? What compartment have they put you in?
So first, I felt rejected.
Yeah.
Now, I was a hybrid, right? Because I was business guy who the church always felt had a calling for the pulpit because I could teach and preach.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a giftedness there. And who actually felt was rebelling, right? For accepting the true calling.
Walking away from your call.
That's right. So that's the tension that I kind of walked through, and it was hurtful because when I was younger, I looked up to my church leaders. Literally, I actually was so admirable of them, and so letting them that I think I displaced them with God.
Yeah.
Right, and there was this adoration. And so my journey was tough, was challenging, was many times hurtful. I think the view for me was choose a camp. That's how I felt. It was like, choose a side, Patrice.
Well, you must have known too. Hey, you guys, there's more in me than my money.
100%. And I felt I could really deploy, So to choose a side. Secondly, there was this idea that I was somehow violating, right, what it means to be a Christian called. There was, and then lastly, there was, okay, just be useful, right? Whether it's my money, my mind, or my hands, if I can contribute without meddling, and to meddle meant to. So in other words, come give us the carnal stuff.
Yeah.
The spiritual stuff, we got it covered. Don't meddle. And so that was kind of how it was. So as a result, I then did what I had to do over there. I was telling a group the other day, I said, you guys are my peoples, because I created my own world in the marketplace that was completely integrated.
Yeah.
And so there was all the things I talked about with to your group about the defining moments of leadership. That's literally what I went through.
Yeah. How has that evolved for you? I mean, what have you learned over the years about the relationship between church leaders and business leaders? Because I assume you started in one place.
100%.
Now you've learned a lot.
Yeah, 100%.
What have you learned?
First is that it's not their fault, right? Because remember, I began as a young learner, right? Because I wasn't a Christian. I became a Christian at 21.
Yeah.
So I'm starting out by saying, Pastor Jeff knows, and I don't.
Yeah.
Pastor Jeff teach me. And as I'm hearing from God, and Pastor Jeff is my validator, then I come to this conflict where Pastor Jeff and what God is telling me, there's a conflict.
Yeah.
Right? And so I go from first saying, okay, which one is God? Because everything I know about God came from Pastor Jeff.
Right.
Now Pastor Jeff is telling me, so there's this thing. Thank God for the book of Samuel, right? I mean, that interaction between Samuel and God and what's the other prophet and his teacher, right? Or is it Samuel? Thank God for Paul and Peter's interaction. Thank God for Galatians.
Yeah.
Thank God for the dynamic between David and Saul, right? Thank God for the various scriptures that gave me precedence to show that Pastor Jeff may not always know everything.
Right.
That there are moments where God would speak to me and Pastor Jeff would have no clue, right? I mean, could you imagine Mary and Joseph, right? And the church, and how that conversation would have gone like?
Yeah.
So all of that. So I go from learner to then dependent on God. So I'm depending on Pastor. Now I had to depend on God, and then to teacher. So I went through that process, and in that process, I've concluded that okay. So part of my calling is to help the church walk this out.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say that.
Yeah.
From the outside say, part of my calling is to help the church.
100%.
Yeah.
And so because I could become a problem for the church, and many people like myself who, the safest person for the church is the guy who doesn't get marketplace calling.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to interfere. He's not going to meddle. He's going to just write the checks and do his thing. He's also the most dangerous person because he's not going to yield to this kingdom idea.
Yeah.
Right? There's kind of a mutual, there's kind of this, the pastor gets what he wants, he gets what he wants, but God is not in control.
And God doesn't get what he wants.
He wants. But the guys like me is the gift that God wants. But we can also be very dangerous. Because if we start seeing the pastors as the problem, right? Because the fact that we got it means that going back to the book of Galatians, right? Means that we're responsible to help them walk this out. So on the other side, I said, okay, my journey, like Joseph said to his brothers, you didn't do this to me. My pastor didn't do this to me. It was God.
Yeah.
Because I needed to be tested and proven and to learn so that on the other side I can say, you know what? Pastor Jeff, that hurts when you do that to him. That hurts. I've been there. I see that hurt. Yeah. I can speak with authority. I can also say, hey, John, as Pastor Jeff does that, here's what he's trying to do. Here's what it means, right? I can kind of interpret for both sides. But then I can also help facilitate an environment of healing for both sides.
Oh, that's so helpful.
So for me, and so as a result today, as you know, I'm part of Manor House. I lead the marketplace ministry of Manor House, and I also created along with my pastor, what we call the School of Kingdom Business and Entrepreneurship.
Right.
And I've been given carte blanche to Patrice, bring to the church what God has put in your heart. Now, this is, I'm 51 now. God called me at 22.
Yeah.
That's how many years later.
Yeah, that's quite an evolution.
Right.
One of the things that you taught this morning was the whole, that period of time when you struggle with isolation. Don't you think it's true that both business leaders and pastors struggle with that same thing?
Oh, 100%.
And the way I would frame it is this statement, nobody gets me.
Oh, 100%.
Pastors feel that way. Business leaders feel that way.
And that's part of the challenge, right? So as a business leader, now here's the other thing that occurs. Let me tie something else and bring it to that point. So the business leader often is intimidated by the pastor.
Yeah.
Because I don't know enough Bible. The pastor is intimidated by the business person. I'm not sophisticated, don't have the money. So these two groups, actually what keeps them apart is they're both intimidated by each other.
Yes.
Right?
And neither one wants to admit it.
Neither one wants to admit it. So part of this walking together is helping the pastor understand that, you know what, that business person, he just wanted to be validated.
Yeah.
And if that's all I wanted. Literally, as by the grace of God, as successful as what I was doing was, I just wanted my church to say, "You got a boy."
Yeah.
That's all I wanted, to be validated, to be affirmed.
Can pastors and business leaders be friends?
Oh, 100%. I mean, my pastor, Pastor Mark, Pastor Dylan, we're good friends. As a matter of fact, now whenever I'm doing major things in my business, I just launched a renewable energy company recently. Yeah. When I meet my pastor, I said, let me tell you where we are. I said, could you pray for me? Because he can understand me even better than anybody else. Yeah. Right? Because he understands risk. He leads a major church. He leads a major budget. Him and I can relate at a level that very few can. And then he can pray with me about it, right? Because he's bringing that spirit. I've even asked him to be on my advisory board.
Well, as a business leader, I know this is a real generic way to look at it, but what would you want a pastor to say to you? How would you want a pastor to invite you in? What words would you like to hear? So these are the words that I heard from my current pastor, which was, he said, I need you, Patrice. Not just your money.
Not just my money, yeah. I need you. What you bring, we need that. But then also, how can we help you do what God placed in you? Yeah. Right? So he didn't just invite me to partner with him. He said, how can I help you do what God put in your heart? Yeah. I want to facilitate that. So I felt, and to be honest with you, when we began the journey, my wife could tell you, I didn't know it was real. So close to 30 years later, I got a pastor who is a very successful pastor, a mega church, very successful, right? Take me out and says, we need you. And how can we help you?
That's how he started?
Yeah. He says,
wow. How
do we partner in a way that your business wins and we win? How do we partner? How do we work together? And so my wife says, aren't you excited? I said, I'm nervous. She said, why? I don't know this is real. Yeah. Because it's not common. It's not common. And I waited 30 years. Yeah. And you're talking about, I know Mark is a very well-educated, savvy leader. Right. That's right.
Who has created a lot in his time.
That's right.
Now, my experience has been with small churches, small congregations, under 100. They have the same dynamic, but a lot of times I think that intimidation factor is more important for them. Yeah. Because they feel like, first of all, most small churches, the pastors who lead small churches are responsible for the finances to some great extent, and they don't feel like they are necessarily gifted to do that. They're gifted to preach and teach and all that stuff, and walk with people, disciple. So I never felt really very adept at the financial end of things. And I could have really used somebody who lived in that world to say, have you thought about this?
Yep.
Have you considered this approach? Yep. So I think that somehow if we can get over that intimidation and really be there for each other, I'm not sure exactly how to do that.
Yeah.
You probably are much more familiar with that.
Yeah, and it begins with saying, let's walk together.
Yeah.
I mean, I like what you said earlier to me when you talk about another business person. Let's walk together. Because what Pastor Mark and I did, we would get together, I think, once a month or every other week.
Yeah.
And we just got together and we just
What'd you talk
brainstormed
about?
together. We talked about our dreams. I heard his vision, right? And he heard mine. We talked about how do we collaborate. I mean, it was like two partners getting together. He was my pastor. It was like a business meeting, right? And that was fun because there wasn't this, it was just two regular people. It was like, how do you get to a place where you come together as peers to collaborate on something? Yeah. So as a small church, and I get it, the small church pastor will feel a bit more intimidated, but that business person is just intimidated of you.
Yeah.
So if you come together, you say, hey, Patrice, you know what? I lead a small church, and you've led a small business, right? Or you lead now based upon what the business is. Yeah. I said, let's walk together. I want to share with you my challenges and share with me your challenges.
So remaining teachable is a big deal.
100%, 100%. And because part of the problem, now there are some pastors will say, I do not want to be so open to my congregation because I've got to lead them, right? That's part of the problem. Now, I'm not saying to lead open to everybody,
right?
But find those business leaders who come alongside you, can come alongside them, and you can walk together.
Because they're going to make you a better leader.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, I think that's the part that we miss. Is we are so consumed with what we get out of relationship.
That's right.
We don't realize what we bring to a relationship.
100%.
And it's so. I mean, in our relationship, a relationship between you and I, especially as I've received coaching from you, I've realized you're really accessible. You're not like the coach from on high, that is giving edicts down. But you're very approachable and you're very open to my thoughts and my wonderings and my vision and things like that.
And isn't that how kingdom process is supposed to work? Because really, what is coaching, right? So we use Jesus as an example for a coach. Coaching is about creating an environment where ideas can flourish. And through those processes, you can then hold the person accountable for execution.
Yeah.
And what's neat about you have ideas and then you execute. Because the most frustrating thing for a coaching process is when the person wants to just stay in the ideas.
Right.
Or that the person is too intimidated to let their ideas flow. And part of the process also is being willing to share your ideas in the midst of insecurities, right? In the midst of uncertainty. Mm-hmm. Because some ideas have not yet been fully cooked. And that process, whether it's a mentorship process or peer-to-peer process or a coaching process, it's about feeling safe enough. I have a client who comes and says, Patrice, I don't really know what we're talk about today.
Yeah.
But I'm sure something will come up, right?
Yeah.
And so I start asking questions. And those are some of the most successful sessions ever.
Yeah.
Because you kind of just draw out of the person. Because in coaching, we often say the client has the answer.
Right.
And it's up to the coach to find out.
Yeah. It's interesting because yesterday I was doing a presentation to a group of people about CitiServe, just kind of introducing them to it, telling them a little bit about me and stuff like that. And one of the things I realized is and this is not a problem that existed when I was pastoring. When I was pastoring, everybody that walked through the door was just there as a gift. But now I am constantly selling myself and selling CitiServe, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting. So a big part of the benefit from coaching I've got from you is just settle down.
That's right.
You're going to get through this. Right. It is different than what you're used to, but
100%.
Let's take this one step at a time and see where this thing can go.
And with that leads to one of the challenges that creates oftentimes tension or this chasm between the pastor and the business person. So the business person, they're used to doing what you're doing now.
Right.
They're always selling themselves. The pastor on the other end is used to being on, having most of them do not
voice
have a
of
demand
God.
problem, right? You don't have a demand problem,
Right.
So you just it's kind of like government, right? They're there, and so the challenge then. So as a result, now I'm used to having to sell myself all the time.
Yeah.
You're used to folks just coming to you, and there we have the tension.
Yeah.
We don't
And
understand
I
each
think that's
other.
a big part of it.
So now, as you are building an independent ministry, nonprofit that's not structured in that setting like the church, you having to sell and you having to relate more to the reality of the business person.
Yeah.
That's what they have to do all the time. And by the way, what's interesting about what you do? What you do is so powerful, and it's so, how do you call it, compelling. And you do it with such a level of integrity and humility that anybody would, but that's how the business person feels, kind of how you're feeling. We have great product, great services. We got to go out there and find a market for it.
Yeah, just you're waiting for somebody to discover it.
Got it.
Listen, man, it's such an honor to have this opportunity to sit down and talk to you. And I think that the people that listen to this interview are really going to gain a lot from it, Patrice. And they can always connect themselves with Nehemiah community and get more. There's always more there. But this is a great opportunity for them to hear your heart. And I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
No, thank you. The honor is mine, Jeff. What you're doing for this city is powerful. And I'm just excited and honored to be a part of that journey with you.
Thank you.